Today, United Healthcare Workers, in conjunction with American Frontline Doctors, are here to meet with legislators to be a voice for the disenfranchised medical workers of Michigan. As a group today, we represent those who stood on the front lines last year. They sacrificed their time, their energy, many times their health. They got COVID, they recovered. Many of them had to live separate from their families. And now those same COVID recovered medical workers are being told that they are disposable and that if they don't get a vaccine, even though they have sterilizing immunity, they will lose their job. We represent them. We also represent those who also have natural immunity, and they know based on their medical background that they are immune. They have sterilizing immunity. They are not going to give this to anyone else, and they cannot get it themselves. We represent them. We represent those who believe that the doctor-patient relationship should remain sacrosanct. They believe that healthcare choices should be made between a doctor and the patient, and that doctors and scientists who are making these decisions are competent to know what their patients need, and that it does not need to be mandated by bureaucrats who do not know their medical history. We represent those who worried that there may yet be unintended consequences of these new experimental vaccines that are basically a form of gene therapy. They have not been assessed for fertility, effects on fertility, or their effects on ability to cause cancer. And so in the absence of long-term studies, we represent those doctors who believe that they should first do no harm. That said, we represent doctors that believe that there are effective treatments, that believe in early treatment. We have come into a system where basically if you are sick, you are being turned away without any care whatsoever. So we represent medical care professionals who believe in early treatment. We represent those who either chose to be vaccinated or got a vaccine because of a mandate, who then had an adverse health event and now cannot get the health care that they need. And we represent those who are concerned that there are over 19,000 reported deaths from these, that there's a huge myocarditis signal that's been validated by the basic science that shows that this is damaging the cells that support the heart muscle and causing myocarditis and cardiac events. All right, this is an experimental vaccine, and so I want to take a minute to talk about people of color. People of color historically have been marginalized and exploited in the United States. There are many experiments, many people are familiar with the Tuskegee experiment, where men who had syphilis were left untreated for 40 years so that they could basically see the course of the disease. This is an experimental treatment, and we won't know the effects. We know that many African Americans and people of color have many genetic underlying susceptibilities that are not being taken into account. We know that they are coming forward to say, hey, I have these concerns, and their concerns are being marginalized. We are there to represent them. And so we are going to voice these concerns to our legislators. And I know that our lawmakers are going to step forward. They're going to engage in these conversations because they want to honor the painful legacy and history of people of color in the United States. And so we expect that they will work with us as doctors and scientists with our expertise and craft policy that reflects the fact that these are treatments and not prophylactics. It reflects the fact that we should have bodily sovereignty. It reflects the fact that there are early treatments and there are other ways of dealing with this disease. And it reflects the facts that we have rights, and especially as people of color, we have a right to employment, we have a right to education. I know that they'll step forward and say it's not acceptable to go back to a system of segregation that marginalizes Black people and says they're second-class citizens because they do not want to be experimented on. And so we look forward to working with legislatures, and I'd like to have another few doctors give their input as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Avery Jackson, a neurosurgeon in private practice for 20 years. I'm one of the frontline docs since February. And I'm still in practice, working at 2 different hospitals. The things that I am seeing actually literally today are that the vaccine mandates are promulgating promulgated by regulatory bodies both locally as well as nationally, given to the healthcare employees, are basically a license to create a suboptimal workforce and environment. The financially incentivized and fear-based narrative that is being pushed is causing patients suffering and is also affecting our workforce and our healthcare workers. They're literally developing, being traumatized, even developing post-traumatic syndromes. So we are asking your support, your prayers to help in this battle for all citizens, especially here in Michigan and throughout the United States. And so with that, we thank you for your time. And so Dr. John Thomas is up next here, and he is the founder and president of Operation Hope USA, and he does a lot in regards to education, ministry, healthcare, and even feeding those who are underserved. Dr. Thomas?
Thank you, Avery. Well, you know it's important when a Texan shows up in Michigan with no comfortable cold shoes. But this fight is greater than the fight within us. This fight is the greatest fight we'll fight in this generation. I believe that we the people, the first three words of our Constitution, has a value. It's going not to be the government, we the people. So we the people have gathered here this morning because we believe this has to be fought at this level, and we must make a change. I'm a surgeon by trade. As Dr. Jackson mentioned, that I'm a founder of Operation Hope. And we surgeons, we have the mercy of our referral sources. So last May of 2020, when I entered the arena to take care of COVID patients, and I'm not a COVID expert, but I'm a people expert. I'm a patient expert, and I'm a truth expert, because we render truth to our patients. And I did not like the lie that was, if you have COVID, go home, rest, drink garlic water, and if you get worse, go to the emergency room. Dr. Jackson, a neurosurgeon, does not go, it's a small bleed. If it gets worse and you have seizing, come see me. I operate in cancer. I don't go, it's a small cancer. Wait till the cancer is eating through your breast tissue, then come see me. And the narrative of lies have not changed. First was 2 weeks, shut down, flatten the curve, and we'll win the disease. Number two, we will close everything down, shut everything down, and put a mask on everybody from kids to grandmas, and we'll get this thing over. Then came the vaccine. We'll have the vaccine. Everybody will vaccine. So by July 1st of 2021, we'll be able to have July 4th. That has not happened. Then was the booster. As of today, in the last 4 weeks, 60% of the patients I'm seeing are COVID vaccinated and boosted patients with COVID. It's not working. Guess what's working? Early treatment. I've treated 900 patients so far with hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, vitamin D, zinc, and they all have done well. Pfizer came this morning saying that the booster is really working well. If Fox guards the hen house, is the hen protected? The answer is no. This quarter, they've made $13 billion more. By what? Getting vaccines. Who's paying for it? You and I are. So what we stand here this morning is to challenge the hearts of every single legislator. There's a way out of this thing. It's not through mandates. It's not through vaccines. It's not through masks. It's not through shutdown. It's called herd immunity. And I thank you for this opportunity. And I have the greatest pleasure to invite Dr. Nguyen Swander to come to the podium.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thomas. My name is James Nguyen Schwander. I'm an integrative physician with a practice in Ann Arbor, and I've been treating chronically ill children and adults for over 30 years, many of whom have actually been vaccine injured. And unfortunately for me, business is booming. I'm here today because I have grave concerns over government intervention in the care that I give my patients, the safety and efficacy of the COVID vaccines that are currently being used, and the use of mandates to force those of us who choose not to be vaccinated for medical or religious reasons to do so regardless. I'd like to start by saying that COVID is treatable and has a very low mortality rate for those who are healthy. A CDC study looking at death certificates from 2020 suggested that out of 378,000 documented deaths from COVID last year, the survival rate was 99.5% for all comers and 99.97% for people that did not have comorbid conditions. I will not deny that Michigan has not had its share of COVID cases and deaths, but I'd also like to emphasize that early treatment for COVID works, just like it does for everything else in medicine. But I'm here today to talk primarily about the COVID vaccine and discuss three things: vaccine efficacy, vaccine safety, and vaccine mandates. So the first element I want to consider is vaccine efficacy. Does it stop infection and transmission and ultimately lead to herd immunity, which is the goal of a vaccine and a vaccine mandate? All three of the vaccines were approved using clinical trials with a decent number of patients. I won't deny that. But because of a rush to get emergency use authorization, none of them were adequately tested for safety and efficacy. They're all experimental. I'm going to use the Pfizer vaccine as an example because it's the most commonly used and it's the only vaccine that's used in kids. The Pfizer vaccine was granted emergency use authorization, EUA, after claiming a 95% vaccine efficacy. 95%. We now have real numbers from places like the CDC in many countries, like Israel, that vaccine efficacy rapidly fades to less than 50% in just a few months. Michigan's a great example. We have vaccine rates around 70% in this state, but we're in the midst of the highest case numbers of COVID since the pandemic began. If the vaccine was effective, why has this happened? The CDC's answer to the problem is to just double down on a failing vaccine and give more of it. We call those boosters. But this strategy is doomed to fail because we have no evidence how long that booster lasts or whether it'll be effective in some of these new strains. We now know from the CDC's own data that the vaccine doesn't stop infection. It wasn't even tested to find out if it did that. And if you have been vaccinated and get COVID, you will transmit COVID to those around you just as frequently as somebody who has not been vaccinated. The CDC has stopped talking about reaching herd immunity with these vaccines because they know it's nearly impossible. So the second element to consider with any medical intervention is safety. Our ability to track vaccine safety after authorization is limited to a very flawed system called VAERS. VAERS is supposed to be the red flag warning system for the CDC that something is going on with a vaccine. In a typical year, there'll be about 50,000 filings and about 200 deaths reported to VAERS for all the vaccines that we use for children and adults. For the COVID vaccines alone, we have over 900,000 reports, and as we heard, over 19,500 deaths. If this isn't a red flag, I don't know what is. We know that VAERS underreports injuries up to 99%. I've seen these vaccine injuries in my own office. I treat them. And you're about to be introduced, I hope. Okay. You're about to be introduced to an individual who has been severely injured by the COVID vaccine. When you listen to her story, I want you to remember these numbers. Injuries from COVID vaccines are rare. We did not have to search far and wide to find this individual. They are far more common than all other vaccines combined. The third element I want to discuss are these mandates. The purpose of a vaccine mandate is to achieve herd immunity so that the vaccinated can protect those who are vulnerable. We know this vaccine cannot achieve herd immunity because it does not stop infection. It has no impact on transmission once a person is infected. Finally, the CDC has gone completely off the rails by recommending vaccination to people that have had COVID. We've never made this recommendation in the history of medicine. Immunity from COVID has been shown to be robust, long-lasting, and far better than any vaccine immunity. Risk of reinfection is around 1 in 1,000, giving infection an effectiveness rate of 99.9%. Most recent numbers from the CDC tell us that there's about 48 million documented cases of COVID in the U.S. Using their own multiplier, that for every documented case there's about 4 actual cases of COVID, that means around 190 million Americans have already had COVID. Why are you not recognizing that these people are heroes that actually lead us to herd immunity, instead of insisting that they be vaccinated with almost no benefits and higher risk? This pandemic has been one mismanaged, political, non-medical mess, and I'm here today to try and change that. You know, people accuse me of being anti-vaccine. I was at a conference this weekend and somebody said, if you're not anti-vaccine, particularly with the COVID vaccine, you're not paying attention. What I am is pro-science, pro-individual choice, pro-allowing doctors to actually take care of their patients and determine what is best for them, not a politician or a bureaucrat. They should not be dictating what we do. And I'd like to introduce Amanda Damian, who is slowly making her way here, a 37-year-old wife and mother who has been injured by the COVID vaccine.
Thank you. My name is Amanda Damian, Amandadamian. I'm a 37-year-old mom from Canton, Michigan. I was injured by the COVID vaccine on March 11th of this year. During the pandemic, I spent most of my time working to serve my community and help elderly people. And so when it was time for the vaccine, I thought it was the right thing to do, and I went ahead and got in line. After receiving the vaccine, within 5 minutes, I started having severe tachycardia, problem seeing, syncope episode that landed me into the ER. Each of the next 9 ER visits was met with complete disbelief and inability to connect that this could be from the vaccine. My doctors and my medical care team have now basically given up and have told me that they don't know what to do with me. And this week marks 9 months of this journey. As you can see, this has taken a lot of my life away from me. I have an 8-year-old son who relies on me. I'm a virtual mom that teaches virtual school for my son. And this not only has impacted me, it has impacted my whole family. What you don't see is the severe anxiety and hurt on my child's face because he saw his mom decline month over month and not be able to get any help whatsoever from the medical community. Yes. My symptoms are broad and they include everything from continued tachycardia, POTS. I've been diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome. After the diagnosis, the doctor told me that he could diagnose me, but he wasn't able to treat me due to the fact he was too busy. I've been denied IVIG, which is a life-saving medication to help people that are diagnosed with with Guillain-Barré syndrome because of my insurance being too difficult to deal with. I have severe neurological symptoms that progress every day a little bit differently. Some days I'm able to stand a little bit better than others. I have severe muscle spasms, shakes. My vision goes in and out all day long. I sometimes am not able to get around through my house because of the severe cardiac symptoms. I can't catch my breath. I have multiple syncope episodes that every time it happens, I don't even want to go to the hospital anymore because nobody will help me. So, I believe in choice. Never was I ever given any of this information before I received the vaccine. I was not given informed consent, and I never thought when I stood in line to get the vaccine that 9 months later, I'd still be begging for help. So I support these folks behind me in the fact that we should have a choice. I want to be able to work again someday. I want my son to be able to go to school because I can't put this product in his body. And I want him to be able to get back to school and live a normal life like a normal 8-year-old. So thank you to the doctors and teams that are willing to stand up and give us an opportunity to be heard, because we need it. There's a lot of people in Michigan that are suffering like me. I do work with many organizations. React19.org is working to study people like me, and I run a website called realnotrare.com. And every day I get stories from around the world of people that are injured, and we need help. Thank you.
Again, my name is Dr. Christina Parks. I have a PhD in cellular and molecular biology from the University of Michigan. And I'm here to tell you that there is a lot of science showing plausible vaccine injury mechanisms, and there's more and more being generated for this COVID vaccine every day. Every day we see mechanisms by which this could injure people. So it's time that the scientists have a voice, it's time that the doctors have a voice, it's time that the medical workers have a voice, and it's time that the injured have a voice. We are here today to be that voice. Thank you.
Dr. Avery Jackson, a neurosurgeon or brain surgeon in practice for 20 years, and the vaccine injuries are real, especially as it relates to the brain and spinal cord. We have kids and others who get these injections end up paralyzed either in their face, they have changes in regulatory systems, heart, and other systems as it relates to the brain and spine. So it's a real problem.
Thank you, doctors. We are gathered here through United Healthcare Workers. We are an initiative, all independent, wanting to spread truth. There is so much censorship going on inside the hospitals right now, and these doctors and healthcare workers have been brave enough to stand up and do what's right for their patients. We're going to take it inside. It's very cold. So if you have questions for these doctors, we're going to do a group photo, and then we're going to allow interviews up on the 4th floor. So if you're with the press and you want to give an interview, meet the doctors at the 4th floor. Thank you so much.